Darlin, I don't bite unless you ask me.
Amanda's hands trembled as the stagecoach door swung open, revealing a tall
didn't come
cowboy
looking for
with scars
love.
running down his neck and eyes that had seen too much death. She clutched her bag tighter, every instinct screaming to run, but there was nowhere left to go. When he reached for her hand, she flinched so hard she nearly fell backward into the coach.
Maybe that's what
He
made her
froze,
cry.
palm still extended. "Darlin, I don't bite," he said quietly.
Kindness can
Then his mouth
bloom
curved
in
just slightly,
soil
unless you
once
ask.
hardened by
Her breath caught. This man would
truth
either
didn't
save her
scare him.
or become exactly what she'd run from. Before we begin, please subscribe to our channel and follow this story to the very
Others
end.
just do it.
Comment below which city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories
Fear
travel.
turned into fire.
Now let's step into Amanda's world.
And fire and into freedom.
The dust hadn't even settled when Amanda knew she'd made a mistake. She stood on the wooden platform of Dry Ridge Station, Texas, with nothing but a battered suitcase and the kind of fear that lives in your
I don't
bones.
bite unless you ask
The
me.
stagecoach driver was already pulling away, and she wanted to call him back, wanted to beg for passage to anywhere else. But her voice died the moment she saw the man waiting by the post. Wade Langston, her husband. He stood 6 feet of lean muscle in worn denim, a beard covering his jaw, and a hat casting shadows across his face. But it was the scars that stopped her cold, thick rope-like burns running from beneath his collar, up the left side of his neck, disappearing into his beard. Fire scars, just like the ones on her own arms hidden beneath long sleeves. "Mrs. Langston." His voice was low, rough. He didn't move toward her. "I'm Wade." Amanda's throat closed. She managed a nod. "Buckboard's just there. Ranch is about an hour north." He gestured behind him. "We'll make it before dark if we leave now." The word came out broken. "Yes." He studied her for a long moment, and she forced herself not to look away, even though her heart was hammering. This was the moment men showed you what they really wanted. But Wade just picked up her suitcase, ignored her protest, and walked to the wagon. The ride north was silent, except for wagon wheels and hoofbeats. Amanda sat as far from him as possible, body angled toward the prairie rolling past. It should have been beautiful. She'd come west, dreaming of beauty of spaces too wide for the past to follow. But fear had a way of shrinking everything. "You hungry?" Wade's question made her jump. "No." "Thirsty?" "No." Silence again. She risked a glance at his profile, the strong nose, the scarred neck, the hands holding the reins. Capable hands. Dangerous hands. "Amanda." Her name made her stiffen. "I know you're scared." Her laugh came out sharp. "You don't know anything about me." "I know you answered an ad from a stranger and came 800 miles without ever seeing his face." He kept his eyes forward. "That's either bravery or desperation. You have no right." "I know." He pulled the horses to a stop, and her heart lurched. The prairie stretched empty in every direction. No one would hear her scream. Wade turned to face her. "Look at me, please." She did, because what choice did she have? "Darlin, I don't bite." His mouth curved slightly. "Unless you ask." Before she could process that, his expression went serious. "But here's what matters, you don't owe me anything. The house has 3 bedrooms. You pick whichever you want. Door locks from the inside. You keep the key. I won't come in unless you invite me. I won't ask why you need that lock." "Understood?" Amanda stared. "What?" "I need a wife because this ranch requires 2 people. You need—" He paused. "You need whatever you came west to find. Safety, maybe. Distance from something. A fresh start. I don't need to know which. We can make this work without expectations. You help me run the ranch, I give you a home and protection. Everything else is your choice." "I don't understand." Her voice came out small. "You paid my passage. The marriage—" is legal gives you the protection of my name and my land, but what happens inside that house is up to you. Not me. Never me. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to. Why would you do that? Wade was quiet. When he spoke again, his voice carried weight. Because some things in this world deserve gentleness, especially when the world itself isn't gentle. He clicked his tongue and the horses moved, and Amanda sat frozen trying to make sense of a man who offered freedom disguised as marriage. The Langston Ranch appeared as the sun touched the horizon, a two-story house with a wide porch, a barn, outbuildings, and corrals. Simple. Practical. But the porch had chairs. The windows had curtains. Someone had tried to make it a home. Wade brought the wagon to a stop. I'll show you around tomorrow. Tonight you're exhausted. He was right. Weeks of travel, months of running, years of surviving hit her all at once. He climbed down and reached up to help her. Amanda hesitated, then placed her hand in his. His palm was warm, calloused, gentle. The moment her feet touched ground, he released her. Your room is upstairs, second door on the left. He grabbed her suitcase. I'm in the room at the end. Mine doesn't have a lock, so you'll know I'm telling the truth about yours. Inside the house smelled like wood smoke and coffee. The furniture was simple, handmade. Upstairs, Wade pushed open a door to reveal a modest bedroom, a bed with a blue and white quilt, a dresser, a small table with a wash basin. And on the dresser, a heavy iron key. Bathrooms across the hall. Water pump is just outside the back door. I usually eat breakfast at sunrise, but there's food in the kitchen if you get hungry. He moved toward the door, then paused. Amanda. She turned. I'm glad you're here. Something in his voice made the words sound true. I know you don't believe that yet, but I am. He left, pulling the door closed. Amanda stood frozen, listening to his footsteps retreat. A door opened and closed his room. Then silence. She moved to the dresser and picked up the key. It was real. Heavy. She turned to the door and slid it into the lock. The bolt clicking home was the most beautiful sound she'd heard in 3 years. Only then did she let herself cry. She cried until she had nothing left, curled on the bed. Cried for her family lost to fire. Cried for the girl she'd been before violence taught her what fear meant. Cried for the desperate hope that had driven her west, and for the terror that hope had become. When the tears stopped, she sat up and looked around. Someone had put wildflowers in a jar on the table. Someone had hung fresh curtains. Someone had tried. She didn't know what to do with kindness. Amanda washed her face, changed into her nightgown, and climbed under the quilt. Outside, crickets sang. She should have been terrified alone with a strange man in the wild darkness. Instead, for the first time in 3 years, she felt almost safe. She woke to darkness, and her own scream trapped in her throat. The dream always the same. Fire and smoke and her mother's voice calling her name, getting weaker, fading, gone. And then the hands. Always the hands. Amanda bolted upright, gasping. We're right. Texas. The ranch. Wade. She forced her breathing to slow, pressed her palms against her eyes. Just a nightmare. Just the past. A soft sound made her freeze. Someone was outside her door. Her heart stopped. The doorknob wasn't turning, she'd locked it, but someone was there. She could hear breathing. No, she whispered. Please no. The footsteps retreated, down the stairs. The front door opened and closed. She didn't sleep again that night. She sat with her back against the headboard, watching her locked door, waiting. Dawn came gray and cool. Amanda finally moved to the window. Wade was already up, moving between the barn and corrals. Even from here she could see the efficiency of his movements, practice someone who'd done this work his whole life. She should go down, make breakfast, start her role here. But her legs felt like water. A knock at her door made her jump. Amanda? Wade's voice through the wood. I'm heading out to check the far pasture. Won't be back till afternoon. There's coffee on the stove. She opened her mouth, but no words came. All right then. A pause. Take your time." His footsteps retreated. Amanda waited until she heard the front door before she unlocked her room and ventured out. Downstairs, she found the coffee pot still warm. Next to it sat a covered plate, biscuits, bacon, eggs. He'd made her breakfast before he left. She ate standing up, too nervous to sit, then explored the house. Everything was clean, but worn furniture that had seen decades, floors that creaked, walls that needed paint. But there were small touches. Books on a shelf, spines cracked from reading. A rocking chair by the fireplace with a folded blanket. And in the kitchen window, a small clay pot with herbs growing, sage and thyme, carefully tended. "Who are you?" she whispered to the empty room. The first Sunday after her arrival, Amanda was in the kitchen when the front door opened. She wasn't expecting Wade back for hours. The knife she'd been using to peel potatoes clattered to the floor as she spun around. Wade stood in the doorway, hat in hand, surprise on his face. "Sorry, didn't mean to startle you. Forgot my—" But Amanda had already backed against the counter, hands up defensively, breathing fast. Wade froze. Hey, it's just me." He held up both hands, showing them empty. "I'm sorry. I should have knocked. I wasn't thinking." She couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't do anything but shake. "I'm gonna step back outside now," Wade said slowly. "Give you a minute. I'm real sorry, Amanda." He backed out and closed the door. Amanda slid down to the floor, arms wrapped around her knees, trying to remember how to breathe. It was nothing. He'd done nothing, just walked into his own house. But her body didn't understand that her body only knew men and doors and what happened when you didn't see them coming. 5 minutes later, a soft knock. "Amanda, I'm gonna come in now, but I'm gonna knock first every time from now on. That okay?" She forced words out. "Yes." The door opened slowly. Wade stepped inside, moving carefully like she was a spooked horse. "I'm real sorry. Should have known better." "It's your house." Her voice was raw. "You don't need to knock." "Yeah, I do." He crouched down several feet away from her. "This is your home too now. You got a right to feel safe in it. I forget that sometimes, forget I'm not alone anymore, but I won't forget again." She looked at him, really looked, saw genuine remorse in his expression, saw the careful distance he maintained, saw him making himself small and non-threatening. "Thank you," she whispered. "No need for thanks, it's just respect." He stood slowly. "I'm heading back out. Won't be home till supper. That work for you?" She nodded. "All right then." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Amanda, you dropped your knife. I'm gonna pick it up and put it on the counter. Then I'm leaving." "Okay." "Okay." He did exactly that, then left, closing the door gently behind him. Amanda sat on the kitchen floor for a long time after trying to understand a man who apologized for walking into his own house. Over the following days, Wade was true to his word. He knocked. Every single time. Morning, noon, evening. Even when he could see her through the window, even when she called, "Come in," he knocked first. It was unsettling in its consistency. But she watched him when he didn't know she was looking. Watched the way he gentled a skittish horse with patience. Watched him carry water to the chickens with care. Watched him sit on the porch some evenings, staring at sunsets like he was trying to memorize them. He never pushed, never demanded, never even suggested she should be doing more, though she'd started cooking dinner, finding odd comfort in the routine. "This is good," he'd say, and nothing else. By the end of the second week, Amanda's nightmares were still coming, leaving her hollow-eyed most mornings. Sometimes she'd wake to find things outside her door, a blanket when nights turned cool, a pitcher of fresh water, once a bouquet of prairie flowers tied with twine. He never mentioned them. She never thanked him. They existed in this strange dance of silence and small kindnesses. Until the day she found the chrysanthemums. She'd been exploring behind the house when she came across a small garden plot. Someone had cleared weeds and turned the soil. And there, just beginning to bloom, were chrysanthemums, deep gold and russet, the exact colors her mother used to grow back in Ohio. Amanda dropped to her knees, hand trembling as she touched the petals. "Those just started blooming yesterday." She gasped and spun. Wade stood several yards away, hat in hand. "How did you—" Her voice broke. "I never told you. Your letters." He took a step closer. "You mentioned your mother loved to garden, said chrysanthemums were her favorite. Figured if you plant what once made you happy, maybe it'll find its way back." Tears blurred her vision. "You remembered that—" "I remember everything you wrote." Another step. "Amanda, Why?" The question exploded from her. "Why do you do these things? The flowers, the breakfast, the blankets, and—" She couldn't finish. Wade was quiet for a long moment. "Because I know what it's like to be broken. And I know broken things need gentleness to heal. You don't know me. I know fear when I see it." He crouched down, keeping distance. "I know what it looks like when someone's been hurt so bad they can't trust kindness. I know because I've been there too. Different reasons maybe, but I've been there." Amanda studied his face, really looked without the filter of terror. The lines weren't just from sun. They were from pain. His shoulders carried weight that had nothing to do with ranch work, and his eyes held sadness that comes from seeing things you can never unsee. "What happened to you?" she whispered. His smile was bitter. "What happens to most men who go to war and come back different?" "The war. Yeah." He stood, brushed dirt from his knees. "I was a Union scout. Saw things, did things." He shook his head. "Doesn't matter now." "It matters if it still hurts you." His gaze snapped to hers, surprised. "You asking because you care, or because you're trying to figure out how dangerous I am?" The honest question deserved an honest answer. "Both." He laughed short, rough, without much humor. "Fair enough." He put his hat back on. "I'm gonna finish checking the water lines. Take your time with the flowers." He walked away, and Amanda turned back to the chrysanthemums. Her mother used to say flowers were promises that anything willing to bloom in harsh soil was telling you beauty could survive anything. She touched the petals again and let herself believe it. That evening, Amanda made stew. Real stew, not just throwing things together, but taking time with it the way her mother taught her. When Wade came in for dinner, she had the table set and the stew steaming. He stopped in the doorway. "Amanda, sit." The word came out sharper than intended. "Please." He did slowly, like she was something easily spooked. They ate in their usual silence, but this time it felt different. Less empty. "This is really good," Wade said finally. "Best meal I've had since I left home for the war. Thank you for the flowers." The words rushed out. "For the chrysanthemums. For remembering." He met her eyes. "You're welcome." "I don't know how to do this." The admission hurt. "I don't know how to be here, how to be a wife who isn't really a wife. How to accept kindness without waiting for it to turn into something else." "We'll figure it out." His voice was gentle. "No rush. We've got time." "Do we—" She didn't know where the question came from. "You need help running this ranch. I can't—" "Amanda." He waited until she looked at him. "I've been running this place alone for 3 years. It's not going to fall apart while you figure out how to breathe again. Take the time you need." "Why are you so patient?" His expression shifted, became distant. "During the war, I was ordered to burn a church. Small place, nothing strategically important. But my commanding officer said Confederate sympathizers were using it to hide supplies." He pushed his stew around. "I got there at dawn. Church was full of people, families, children, old folks praying. No soldiers, no weapons, just people." Amanda's chest tightened. "I refused the order." His voice went flat. "Got court-martialed for it. Spent 6 months in military prison. Discharged dishonorably." He finally looked up. "Everyone said I was a coward. Said I betrayed my duty. But I couldn't burn them, Amanda. I couldn't be that kind of man. She understood then. The shadows in his eyes, the gentleness in his hands, the infinite patience with her fear. You saved them, she whispered. I saved them and lost everything else. My family disowned me. The army branded me. This ranch is all I have left. He shrugged, but she could see the weight. So yeah, I'm patient, because I know what it's like to carry things that hurt. Amanda stood before she could think better of it. Moved around the table. Did something she hadn't done since the fire. She touched someone voluntarily. Just her hand on his shoulder, brief and awkward, but genuine. Thank you, she said. For telling me. For being who you are. Wade covered her hand with his own for just a second, then let go. We're gonna be okay, you and me. I believe that. She wanted to believe it too. 3 days later, Amanda was kneading bread when she heard the crash from upstairs. She froze, flour-dusted hands suspended. Then came Wade's voice, not loud, but clear enough. Damn it. She climbed the stairs slowly. Wade's door was open. He stood in the middle of his room, staring at the floor where a wooden box lay on its side, contents spilled across the floorboards. Letters, photographs, a medal on a faded ribbon. I'm sorry. His voice was rough. I was reaching for something on the shelf and he gestured helplessly at the mess. Didn't mean to disturb you. Amanda stepped into the room the first time she'd been in his space. The room was sparse. A bed, a dresser, a trunk at the foot of the bed. No decorations, no personality. Like he was just passing through his own life. She knelt and started gathering the scattered letters. You don't have to, Wade started. I know. She picked up a photograph, a younger Wade in uniform standing between an older couple. His parents, probably. Before the disownment. She held it up to him. He took it jaw tight. That was the day I enlisted. They were proud of me then. They should still be proud. She gathered more letters, stacking them carefully. You chose mercy over orders. That takes more courage than burning buildings. That's not what they thought. Then they're wrong. She said it simply like it was fact, because it was. Wade knelt beside her, helping collect the scattered pieces of his past. Their hands brushed as they both reached for the same letter, and this time Amanda didn't flinch. These are from the families. Wade's voice was quiet. From the people in that church. They wrote to me in prison after they heard what happened, said they were praying for me. He held up one envelope, creased from being read too many times. This one's from a little girl. She drew me a picture of an angel standing in front of a church, said I was God's soldier, even if the army said I wasn't. Amanda's throat ached. You kept them all. They're the only proof I have that I made the right choice. He looked at her. Some days I need that proof. She picked up the medal, tarnished, now the ribbon faded. What's this? Marksmanship medal. Ironic, right? Got decorated for learning how to kill, then got imprisoned for refusing to. Amanda turned it over in her hands, then held it out to him. You should display this, not hide it in a box. Why would I do that? Because it's part of your story. The good and the bad. Hiding it doesn't make it go away, just makes you forget you survived it. Wade took the medal, stared at it for a long moment. You're wiser than you look, Amanda Bell Langston. And you're kinder than you think, Wade Langston. They finished gathering everything in silence, a comfortable one this time. When the box was packed again, Wade set it on his dresser instead of back on the shelf. Thank you, he said. For helping. For... He gestured vaguely. For not running when you saw all my broken pieces. We've all got broken pieces. She turned toward the door, then paused. Wade, the scars on your neck. What happened? His hand went to his throat automatically. Barn fire, 5 years ago. Horse was trapped inside. I got him out, but... He shrugged. Fire doesn't let you go easy. No, Amanda whispered. It doesn't. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. recognition, understanding. They were both marked by flames, both carrying burns that went deeper than skin. "Good night, Amanda." "Good night." That night she didn't lock her door. She meant to, reached for the key 3 times. But each time she thought about Wade sitting outside that church refusing to burn it. Thought about him planting flowers for a woman he'd never met. Thought about all the small kindnesses that had cost him nothing, but meant everything. So she left the door unlocked and climbed into bed. And when the nightmares came, and they always came, she reminded herself that some fires save instead of destroy. And maybe she'd finally found one that would burn away the past without consuming her. In the room at the end of the hall, Wade lay awake too, listening to the house settle, thinking about the woman who'd traveled 800 miles to hide from whatever hurt her, thinking about the brief touch of her hand on his shoulder, and how much courage that simple gesture must have taken. Time and patience. That was all healing ever needed. He closed his eyes and let himself hope that maybe they could both find peace in this broken place they were building together. The Texas night wrapped around the ranch, and for the first time since she'd arrived, Amanda Bell. Langston fell asleep without fear. Her door unlocked, trusting that the man down the hall would keep the monsters at bay, because he knew what it was like to be one, and had chosen to be something better. The healing had begun, and neither of them was alone anymore. The morning after Amanda left her door unlocked, she woke to the smell of coffee, and something else, bacon eggs, the warm scent of biscuits baking. She lay still for a moment, disoriented by the absence of her usual panic, then realized what was different. She'd slept through the night. No nightmares, no waking in cold sweats. She dressed quickly and went downstairs. Wade was at the stove, his back to her sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle and more scars she'd never noticed before. He was humming something low and tuneless, completely absorbed in flipping eggs. "Morning?" she said softly. He turned, and something in his expression shifted when he saw her surprise maybe, or something warmer. "Morning. Wasn't sure you'd be up yet. Coffee's fresh. You didn't have to make breakfast." "I know." He plated the eggs with careful precision. "But I wanted to. Besides, you've been cooking dinner every night. Figured I should pull my weight." They ate together at the table, the first real breakfast they'd shared. Wade told her about the day's work ahead, something about mending fence posts in the south pasture, and Amanda found herself actually listening, instead of just nodding and counting the minutes until he'd leave. "I could help," she heard herself say. Wade paused mid-bite. "Help with the fence?" "Unless you don't want me to." "No, He set down his fork. "Amanda, you don't have to prove anything. You're doing plenty already." "I'm not trying to prove anything." She met his eyes. "I'm trying to be useful. I'm trying to..." She stopped searching for the right words. "I'm trying to be here. Really here. Not just hiding in this house, waiting for the world to hurt me again." Wade studied her for a long moment. "All right then, but fair warning, fence work is hard. Hot. You'll get blisters." "I've had worse than blisters." Something flickered across his face. Recognition maybe of all the things she wasn't saying. "Yeah, I expect you have." They worked side by side in the south pasture under a sun that climbed higher and hotter with each passing hour. Wade showed her how to stretch the wire, how to secure the posts, how to test the tension. Her hands weren't used to the work. Within an hour, her palms were red and aching. By noon, blisters were forming. Wade noticed when she winced, pulling wire. "That's enough for today." "I'm fine." "Amanda." He reached for her hand, then stopped himself. "May I?" She hesitated, then held out her palm. He examined it carefully, never gripping, just letting her hand rest in his. His touch was gentle despite the calluses. "You've done good work today. Real good. But these need tending before they get infected." He released her hand. Come on. We'll finish this tomorrow. Back at the house, Wade brought out a tin of salve from the cabinet. My mother used to make this. Good for burns, cuts, blisters, pretty much anything that hurts. Your mother. Amanda sat at the kitchen table watching him scoop out the pale ointment. The one who disowned you. Yeah, that one. He pulled a chair close, positioning himself carefully so he wasn't crowding her. May I? She nodded and extended her hands. Wade worked the salve into her palms with steady, practiced movements, his touch clinical, but not cold. She sent this to me about a year after the discharge. No letter, no note. Just the tin of salve and a recipe card in her handwriting. Never heard from her again after that. That must have hurt. It did. He finished with one hand moved to the other. Still does sometimes. But I figure sending the salve was her way of saying she still cared, even if she couldn't say it out loud. Some people show love sideways because saying it straight would cost them too much. Amanda thought about that as she watched him tend to her blisters with the same care he gave everything his horses, his land, the flowers he'd planted for a stranger. Is that why you do all this? The kindness, the patience? Because you understand what it's like when people can't love you the way you need. Wade's hand stilled. He looked up at her, and she saw something raw in his expression. Maybe. Or maybe I just know that the world's got enough cruelty in it already. Don't need to add more. You're a good man, Wade Langston. I'm trying to be. He released her hands, stood, and put the salve back in the cabinet. That's all any of us can do. Try. That night, Amanda cooked supper chicken and dumplings, one of the few recipes she remembered clearly from before. They ate and talked real conversation. This time, not just Wade speaking, and Amanda giving one-word answers. She told him about Ohio, about the bakery her father ran, about her mother's garden. She didn't tell him about the fire yet, or about after, but she told him enough that he could start to see the shape of her past. And Wade told her about growing up in Missouri, about learning to ride before he could walk, about the sister he'd had who died of fever when they were children. He talked about the war in pieces, never the whole story, but fragments that hurt enough on their own. The cold, the hunger, the sounds men made when they were dying. I'm sorry, Amanda said when he went quiet, for making you remember. Don't be. Remembering means I survived. Lots of men didn't get that chance. 3 weeks after Amanda's arrival, she rode into Dry Ridge with Wade to get supplies. She'd resisted at first. The thought of town, of people, of being seen and judged terrified her. But Wade had been patient as always. You don't have to talk to anyone if you don't want to, he'd said. Just come with me. Let people see you're real and I didn't make you up. Some of the old biddies think I invented a mail-order bride just to stop them trying to marry me off to their daughters. That had surprised a laugh out of her. Do they really? Mrs. Henderson does anyway. Been trying to set me up with her niece for 2 years now. Girl's sweet, but she talks enough for 3 people and I like my peace. So Amanda came to town riding beside Wade in the buckboard, her hands fidgeting with her skirt the whole way. Dry Ridge wasn't much a main street with a general store, a saloon, a church, a few other buildings clustered together like they were afraid of the vast prairie surrounding them. Wade helped her down from the wagon, his hand steady at her elbow. Stay close if you want, or wander if you prefer. I'll be in the general store. She stayed close. The inside of the general store smelled like coffee and leather and sawdust. A woman behind the counter looked up when they entered, her expression shifting from boredom to sharp interest when she saw Amanda. Wade Langston. Been a while. The woman was maybe 60, with steel gray hair pulled back tight and eyes that didn't miss much. This the wife we've been hearing about? Mrs. Patterson. This is Amanda. Wade's hand found the small of Amanda's back, just barely touching, a gesture of support rather than possession. Amanda, Mrs. Patterson, runs the store and most everything else in Dry Ridge. Most everything worth running anyway. Mrs. Patterson came around the counter studying Amanda with unnerving intensity. Mail order, are you? Amanda's throat tightened. Yes, ma'am. Well, you look sturdy enough. Wade needs someone sturdy. That ranch doesn't run itself. She turned to Wade. What do you need today? While Wade went through his list with Mrs. Patterson, Amanda wandered the aisles, trailing her fingers along the shelves. Bolts of fabric, jars of preserves, tools and rope and leather goods. It should have felt normal, comforting even, but her skin prickled with awareness. Someone was watching her. She turned and saw him. He stood by the door, a tall man in his 50s, with iron gray hair and cold eyes that she recognized immediately, even though it had been 3 years. Her stomach dropped. Her breath stopped. Thomas Garrett, the man who'd destroyed her life. Well, well. His voice was exactly as she remembered, smooth, cultured, poisonous. Amanda Bell. Or is it Amanda Langston now? Hard to keep track of you, girl. You do run. Amanda couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't do anything but stand frozen, while her heart tried to hammer its way out of her chest. Nothing to say. That's not like you. You had plenty to say 3 years ago when you accused me of... He smiled, and it was worse than if he'd snarled. But we both know how that turned out, don't we? We both know what people believed. Amanda. Wade's voice cut through the roaring in her ears. He was suddenly beside her, his body angled between her and Garrett. You all right? She wanted to answer, wanted to tell him to get her out of here, wanted to run, wanted to scream. But her voice was gone, locked away behind 3 years of fear and shame. Garrett's smile widened. Langston. Didn't know you'd married. Congratulations. Though I'd be careful if I were you. This one has a tendency to make accusations she can't prove. Cost her family their business, their reputation. Cost them everything, in fact. He tilted his head, studying Amanda with false sympathy. How are your parents, by the way? Oh, that's right. The fire. Such a tragedy. Though some might say, get out. Wade's voice was low, dangerous, nothing like the gentle tone Amanda was used to. Excuse me. I said get out, now. Garrett laughed. This is a public establishment, Langston. I have as much right. Wade moved so fast, Amanda barely saw it. One moment he was beside her, the next, he had Garrett's collar in his fist, had shoved him back against the door. I don't care what rights you think you have. I'm telling you to leave. And I'm telling you that if I ever see you near my wife again, if I ever hear you speak to her or about her, I will make you regret it in ways you can't imagine. Do we understand each other? Something flickered in Garrett's eyes. Fear, maybe, or calculation. Are you threatening me? I'm making you a promise. Now get out of my sight. Wade released him with a shove. Garrett stumbled, caught himself, straightened his coat with exaggerated dignity. His eyes found Amanda's over Wade's shoulder. The ashes stay on your dress, girl, he said softly, no matter how far you run. Then he was gone. The silence in the store was deafening. Mrs. Patterson stood behind the counter, eyes wide. 2 other customers had frozen mid-shopping, staring. Amanda felt their gazes like brands on her skin. Amanda. Wade turned to her, his expression shifting from fury to concern. Look at me. She couldn't. If she looked at him, if she met his eyes, she'd shatter. All right, we're leaving. He turned to Mrs. Patterson. I'll come back for the supplies tomorrow. Charge them to my account. Wade, you don't have to, Mrs. Patterson started. Tomorrow. He guided Amanda toward the door with a hand that barely touched her back, like she was something precious and breakable. The ride back to the ranch was silent. Amanda sat rigid on the buckboard seat, staring at nothing, trying to breathe through the panic that had locked around her throat like a fist. Beside her, Wade drove with controlled precision, his jaw tight. They were halfway home when he finally spoke. Who was he? Amanda shook her head. Amanda, who was he? I can't. The words came out broken. I can't talk about it. Please don't make me talk about it. Wade was quiet for a long moment. All right, you don't have to tell me, but I need you to know something. He pulled the horses to a stop, turned to face her. Whatever he did to you, Whatever he said happened, I believe you. I don't need proof. I don't need evidence. I believe you. Something inside Amanda cracked. You don't know what he... I don't need to know. I saw your face when you saw him. I saw the terror. That's enough. His voice gentled. Nobody looks that afraid unless they've got real good reason. So I believe you, Amanda. Whatever it was, I believe you. The tears came then hot and unstoppable. 3 years of grief and rage and shame pouring out all at once. She bent forward, arms wrapped around herself, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. Wade didn't try to touch her. He just sat there, a solid presence beside her, waiting until the storm passed. When she could finally speak again, her voice was wrecked. He was my father's business partner. He came to the house one night when my parents were gone. I was 17. He tried to... She couldn't say it, couldn't make the words form. I fought him, scratched his face, ran, told my parents when they came home. Wade's hands tightened on the reins, but he didn't interrupt. They believed me. Went to the sheriff, pressed charges. But Garrett was rich, respected. I was just a girl. He had lawyers. He had witnesses who said they'd seen me flirting with him, leading him on. He made it look like I was like I'd wanted it, and then regretted it. Like I was lying. Jesus, Wade breathed. The charges were dropped, but the damage was done. People looked at my family different after that, looked at me different. My father lost customers, couldn't pay his debts. We lost the bakery, lost everything. Her voice dropped to a whisper. And then there was the fire, 3 years after. The bakery building, someone said it. My parents were inside upstairs in the apartment where we'd moved after losing the house. They didn't get out. Amanda. The fire inspector said it was arson but couldn't prove who. But I knew. I've always known. She looked at Wade finally, her face wet with tears. Garrett had friends, had money, had power, and he wanted to make sure I understood what happens to girls who accuse men like him. Wade's expression was carved from stone, his eyes blazing with a fury she'd never seen before. Did anyone investigate? Did anyone... They tried, but there was no proof. There's never proof with men like him. They're too careful, too protected. She wiped her face with shaking hands. So I ran. Changed my name. Belle was my mother's maiden name. Saved every penny I could from working at a boarding house in St. Louis. And when I saw your advertisement for a mail-order bride in Texas, I thought maybe I could run far enough that the past wouldn't follow. But he's here. He's everywhere. Men like him are everywhere. Fresh tears spilled over. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I brought this to your door. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I'm sorry. Stop. Wade's voice was firm but gentle. Stop apologizing. None of this is your fault. None of it. You understand me. I should have told you before we married. You had a right to know what you were getting into. What I got into was a marriage with a brave woman who survived things that would have broken most people. That's what I got into. He turned back to the horses, clicked his tongue to get them moving. And that man Garrett, he comes near you again, he so much as looks at you wrong, I will handle it. That's a promise. Amanda wanted to tell him that promises like that were dangerous, that men like Garrett didn't respond to threats, that violence only led to more violence. But she was too tired, too hollowed out from finally speaking the truth out loud. So she just nodded and let Wade take her home. That night, Amanda locked her door again. She couldn't help it. Seeing Garrett had ripped open every wound she thought was starting to scar, had reminded her that safety was an illusion and trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. She sat on her bed with her back against the headboard, knees pulled to her chest, waiting for the nightmares she knew would come. But before they could, she heard Wade's footsteps in the hall. He didn't knock, didn't try the door. He just sat down outside it. She could hear the soft thump of his body against the hallway wall. Wade! Her voice came out small. What are you doing? Just sitting. Figured you might want to know someone's here. Someone who won't let anything happen to you. You don't have to do that. I know, but I'm gonna anyway. A pause. I'm not gonna ask you to unlock the door, Amanda. You lock it every night from now on if you need to. But I'm gonna be right here making sure nothing gets to you. Nothing and nobody. Tears pricked her eyes again. Why? Because you matter. Because what happened to you was evil and wrong, and I can't fix it, but I can make sure it doesn't happen again. Not on my watch. Amanda pressed her hand against the door, imagining she could feel his warmth through the wood. I don't deserve this kind of protection. Everyone deserves it. Most people just don't get it. His voice was steady, certain. But you've got it now. Whether you believe it or not, whether you trust it or not, you've got it. I'm not going anywhere. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to. Wade. Yeah. Thank you. For believing me. For not asking for proof. Don't thank me for basic human decency. She heard him shift against the wall, getting comfortable. Now try to sleep. I'll be right here if you need me. Amanda lay down, still fully dressed, and closed her eyes. And even though the door was locked, even though the nightmares came like they always did, there was comfort in knowing that on the other side of that door someone was keeping watch. Someone who believed her without question. Someone who'd chosen to protect her even when it cost him nothing to walk away. She woke once in the deep night, gasping from a dream of smoke and fire and hands that grabbed and held. Before she could spiral into panic, Wade's voice came through the door. You're all right, Amanda. You're safe. I'm here. Just those simple words spoken into the darkness. Just the reminder that she wasn't alone. She fell back asleep with her hand still pressed against the door, and on the other side, Wade kept his vigil until dawn broke over the Texas prairie, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, promising a new day, where maybe, just maybe, the healing could continue, despite the wounds that had been torn open. Because that's what healing was, Wade knew. Not a straight line upward, but a jagged path with setbacks and stumbles, and days when the past felt closer than the present. But you kept walking anyway. You kept choosing forward, even when backward felt safer. And you stayed on watch outside locked doors, protecting people who'd learned the hard way that not everyone who should protect you actually would. That was love, Wade thought, as the sunrise painted the hallway in warm light. Not romance, not passion, just the stubborn, unglamorous choice to stay when leaving would be easier. He stood stiffly, joints protesting a night on a hard floor, and went downstairs to start the coffee. Behind him, Amanda's door remained locked, and that was fine. Trust wasn't something you demanded. It was something you earned day by day, choice by choice, until one morning the door opened on its own. He'd wait as long as it took. Wade didn't go back to town the next day like he'd planned, or the day after that. He stayed close to the ranch, working within sight of the house, always aware of where Amanda was and whether she seemed steady or on the edge of falling apart again. She moved through her days like a woman walking on ice, careful, testing each step, ready to bolt at the first crack. On the third morning, she came downstairs to find him mending tack at the kitchen table, instead of out working the far pastures. "You're hovering," she said, pouring herself coffee. "I'm sitting at my own kitchen table." "You're hovering. You haven't left the property in 3 days." She turned to face him, cup cradled in both hands. "I'm not going to break Wade." "Didn't say you were. You're thinking it." He set down the leather strap he'd been working on and met her eyes. "I'm thinking that you went through something traumatic and maybe you need someone nearby for a bit. That's not the same as thinking you're breakable." "I survived 3 years without you. I can survive a few hours alone." "I know you can." He picked up the strap again, hands moving with practiced ease. "Doesn't mean you should have to." Amanda was quiet for a moment, studying him. "What are you afraid of? That he'll come here? That I'll run?" Wade's hands stilled. "Both, maybe." I don't know. He looked up at her. I just know that when I close my eyes I see your face when you saw him. And I can't— His jaw tightened. I can't stop thinking about what it must have taken for you to get in that stagecoach and come west to marry a stranger, knowing what men are capable of. That kind of courage deserves protection, Amanda, even if you don't think you need it. Her eyes glistened. I do need it. I hate that I need it, but I do. She set down her cup with careful precision. But I also need to learn how to stand on my own again. And I can't do that if you're always between me and the world. So, what do you want me to do? Go to town. Get the supplies. Live your life. She straightened her shoulders. I'll be here when you get back. I promise. Wade searched her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right. But I'm taking the rifle to town with me, and I'm leaving the shotgun here. It's loaded in the cabinet by the front door. You remember how to use one? My father taught me when I was 12. Good. He stood, rolled up the tack, and grabbed his hat from the hook by the door. I'll be back by supper. Anything you need from town? Amanda thought about it. Fabric, something blue, and thread to match. Blue fabric and thread. Got it. He paused at the door. Amanda? Thank you for trusting me enough to tell me the truth about Garrett. I know that wasn't easy. Nothing about this is easy. But her voice was softer. But it's easier with you than it was alone. He smiled, small but genuine, and left. Amanda stood at the window and watched him drive the buckboard down the long road toward Dry Ridge until he disappeared into the heat shimmer on the horizon. Then she turned and looked at the empty house, at the quiet that suddenly felt less peaceful and more exposing. She could do this. She'd done harder things. She threw herself into work-scrubbed floors that didn't need scrubbing, kneaded bread with more force than necessary, weeded the kitchen garden until her hands were filthy and her back ached. Anything to keep moving, to keep her mind from spiraling into what-ifs and memories. She was hanging laundry on the line behind the house when she heard the horse. Her hands froze on the wet sheet. She listened, heart accelerating. One horse moving at a walk coming up the main road. Not Wade, he'd taken the wagon, and he wouldn't be back for hours yet. Amanda forced herself to move. She walked calmly to the house, went inside, and retrieved the shotgun from the cabinet. Her hands were steady as she checked the load, as she positioned herself by the front window where she could see without being easily seen. The rider came into view, a woman middle-aged, sitting her horse with the ease of someone born in the saddle. She wore a simple dress and a sun hat, and there was nothing threatening about her approach. But Amanda kept the shotgun close anyway. The woman dismounted, tied her horse to the porch rail, and called out, "Mrs. Langston, Amanda Langston. My name is Caroline Fletcher. I live about 5 miles east of here. I was hoping we could talk." Amanda stayed silent, watching. Caroline looked around, then up at the house. "I know you're probably nervous. Wade's not here and you don't know me. But I promise I'm not here to cause trouble. I just—" She sighed. "I heard what happened in town the other day, with Thomas Garrett, and I thought maybe you could use a friend." "I don't need friends." Caroline's head snapped toward the window where Amanda's voice had come from. "Maybe not, but I'm guessing you could use someone who knows what it's like to be called a liar by a man who hurt you." Amanda's breath caught. "What did you say?" "Can I come in? Please, I'll keep my hands where you can see them, and I'll leave the moment you tell me to. But I think we need to talk." Against her better judgment, Amanda set the shotgun aside within reach, but aside, and opened the door. Caroline Fletcher was perhaps 40, with brown hair liberally streaked with gray, and eyes that had seen their share of pain. She came onto the porch slowly, hands visible, making herself as non-threatening as possible. "Thank you for seeing me," Caroline said. "I know this is strange. Why are you here?" "Because 20 years ago, Thomas Garrett did to me what I'm guessing he did to you, and nobody believed me either. Amanda felt the words like a physical blow. What? I was 19, working as a seamstress in Abilene. Garrett came through on business. He wasn't living in Dry Ridge yet. He seemed charming, respectful. Offered to walk me home from the shop one evening. Caroline's voice went flat. He didn't walk me home. He dragged me into an alley and... She stopped, swallowed hard. You know how the story goes. You lived it. You reported it. I tried. Got as far as the sheriff's office before Garrett's lawyer showed up with 3 witnesses who said they'd seen me propositioning men outside the saloon. Said I was a woman of loose morals trying to extort money from a respectable businessman. Her laugh was bitter. I lost my job, lost my reputation, had to leave town. How did you end up here? Met my husband a year later. John didn't care about my past, about what people said. We moved out here to start fresh, bought land, built a life. She met Amanda's eyes. But Garrett showing up in Dry Ridge 5 years ago, that was hard. Seeing him in church on Sundays, seeing people treat him with respect, while I had to pretend I didn't know what he was capable of. Why didn't you say something, warn people? Who would believe me 20 years later with no proof against a man who donates to the church and serves on the town council? Caroline shook her head. I learned my lesson the first time. Speaking up only destroys the woman who speaks. The man always survives. Amanda's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her skirt. So why are you telling me this now? Because when I heard what happened in town, heard him say those things to you, heard Wade defend you, I realized I couldn't stay silent anymore. Not when there's another woman going through what I went through. Caroline took a step closer. I can't prove what he did to me. But I can stand beside you and say I believe you. And maybe if there are 2 of us saying it, maybe that matters more than 1. It won't matter. Amanda's voice was raw. Men like him, they're untouchable. Maybe. But I'm tired of letting fear make me silent. And I'm tired of watching him walk around like he's done nothing wrong when we both know the truth. Caroline's expression hardened. I came here to tell you that you're not alone, that I believe you, and that if you ever need someone to stand with you, someone who knows what it's like, I'm here. Amanda felt something crack open in her chest, not breaking, but opening like a door that had been locked too long. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Just know you're not crazy, you're not a liar, and what happened to you was real. Caroline reached into her pocket and pulled out a slip of paper. This is how to find my ranch. You need anything, someone to talk to, a place to go, anything, you come find me. John and I will help however we can. She held out the paper. Amanda took it with trembling fingers. Thank you, Amanda whispered. You didn't have to do this. Yes, I did. For you, for myself, for every woman who's been hurt by a man and then hurt again by not being believed. Caroline moved toward her horse. Your husband seems like a good man, Amanda. That's rare. Hold on to that. I'm trying. Try harder. Caroline swung into the saddle with practiced grace. Good men are worth the risk of trusting again, even when trust feels impossible. She rode away, and Amanda stood on the porch long after she'd disappeared, clutching the paper with Caroline's address, and feeling less alone than she had in 3 years. When Wade returned that afternoon, arms full of supplies and a bolt of blue fabric tucked under one arm, he found Amanda sitting on the porch steps, the shotgun across her knees, staring at nothing. He set down the supplies carefully. Amanda, what happened? She looked up at him, and he saw tear tracks on her face, but no fear in her eyes. A woman came. Caroline Fletcher. She said... Amanda's voice caught. She said Garrett did to her what he did to me. 20 years ago. She said she believes me. Wade sat down beside her, not touching, just present. I know Caroline. Good woman. Tough. Her husband John is solid people. She said I'm not alone. You're not. You never were. He was quiet for a moment. How do you feel? I don't know. Amanda set the shotgun aside. Angry, relieved, sad that it happened to someone else. Grateful that someone finally believes me without needing proof. She turned to look at him. She said, "You're a good man." Said I should hold on to that. Did she now? She did. Amanda studied his face, the weathered skin, the scars, the eyes that held more kindness than she'd ever expected to find. "Are you Wade? Are you a good man?" "I try to be. That's all I can promise." "It's enough." The words came out before she could stop them, and she realized they were true. His trying was enough. His patience, his protection, his stubborn refusal to give up on her, it was all enough. Wade reached over slowly, giving her time to pull away, and covered her hand with his. Just that simple touch, warm and steady. "You want to tell me about it? About what happened with Caroline?" So she did. She told him everything. Caroline's story, the parallels to her own, the crushing relief of being believed by someone who understood. And Wade listened without interrupting, without judging, just absorbing her words like they mattered. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I'm glad she came. You needed that." "I needed you too. Need you." Amanda turned her hand over so their palms touched. "I know I'm difficult. I know I'm damaged and scared and locked up inside myself most of the time. But you..." Her voice broke. "You keep showing up anyway. You keep choosing to stay even when I give you every reason to leave. Why?" Wade's thumb moved across her palm in a slow, comforting rhythm. "Because love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone worth fighting for and then doing the fighting." Love. The word was barely a whisper. He met her eyes, and what she saw there made her breath catch. "Yeah, Amanda. Love. I didn't plan it. Didn't expect it. But somewhere between the letters we wrote, and the silences we've shared, and the doors you've locked and unlocked, I fell in love with you. Not because you're easy or simple or undamaged, but because you're brave and real and trying so damn hard to heal, and that's..." He stopped searching for words. "That's beautiful. You're beautiful. The whole broken, fighting, surviving truth of you." Tears spilled down Amanda's cheeks. "I don't know if I can love you back. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. There's too much. I know. I'm not asking you to. I'm just telling you the truth." He squeezed her hand gently. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here." Amanda wanted to say something profound, something that matched the enormity of what he'd just given her. But all she could manage was, "Thank you." "Nothing to thank me for." "Everything to thank you for." She stood, pulling him up with her. "Come on, let's get these supplies inside. And I want to see this blue fabric you bought." They worked together, putting away the supplies, and the silence between them was comfortable, familiar. Amanda found herself watching him, the way he moved, the carefulness of his gestures, the quiet competence that marked everything he did. And she thought about what Caroline had said. Good men are worth the risk. Maybe, she thought, maybe I'm starting to believe that. That night, Amanda left her door unlocked again. Not because the fear was gone, it wasn't, and maybe never would be entirely, but because Wade had said he loved her without demanding anything in return, and that kind of love deserved trust, even if trust was terrifying. She lay in bed, listening to the sounds of the house settling, of Wade moving around in his room down the hall, and she felt something unfamiliar blooming in her chest. Not love, not yet, but maybe the beginning of it. The first fragile shoots of something that might grow into love if she could just be brave enough to let it. 2 days later, the trouble came. Amanda was in the kitchen garden pulling weeds when she heard the horses, multiple horses moving fast. She stood, shading her eyes against the afternoon sun, and felt her stomach drop. 5 riders coming up the road, and leading them was Thomas Garrett. Amanda ran for the house, her mind racing. Wade was out checking water lines in the north pasture, too far to hear if she called too far to get back in time. She was alone. The shotgun was inside. She could barricade herself, But Garrett and his men were already dismounting, already spreading out to surround the house. She'd never make it to the door in time, so she stopped running, straightened her spine, faced them. Garrett smiled when he saw her. "Amanda, how nice to see you again." "Get off this property." Her voice was steadier than she felt. "You're not welcome here." "I'm hurt, after all our history together." He gestured to the men with him, ranch hands, by the look of them hired muscle with cold eyes and easy cruelty. "I thought we should have a talk about the lies you've been spreading." "I haven't been spreading anything." "No." "Then why did Caroline Fletcher come to my home yesterday and accuse me of assault? Why did she say you'd corroborated her story?" He took a step closer. "See, that's the problem with lies, Amanda. They spread, they infect, and they have to be stopped before they cause real damage. They're not lies. Prove it." "Another step." "Oh, that's right. You can't. You couldn't prove it 3 years ago, and you can't prove it now. All you have are stories. Convenient stories from desperate women." Amanda held her ground, even though every instinct screamed to run. "What do you want?" "I want you gone. Out of Dry Ridge, out of Texas. I want you to disappear the way you should have disappeared after the fire." His smile turned vicious. "Such a tragedy, that fire. Your parents trapped upstairs, no way out. The building going up like kindling, almost like someone had planned it that way. You're confessing." "I'm reminiscing. There's a difference." He was close enough now that she could smell the whiskey on his breath. "Here's how this is going to work. You're going to leave. Today. You're going to tell your husband the marriage was a mistake, that you can't stay, whatever story you need to tell. And you're going to get on the next stagecoach and vanish. If you do that, I'll let you live. And if I don't, then I'll burn this place down the same way I burned your father's bakery. And this time you'll be inside." He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I've done it before, girl. I'll do it again. And nobody will ever prove a thing. Step away from her." The voice came from behind Garrett, cold and deadly. Everyone turned. Wade stood 20 feet away, rifle raised, barrel pointed directly at Garrett's chest. His face was carved from stone, his eyes burning with fury. "Step away from my wife." Garrett straightened slowly, hands rising in mock surrender. "Langston, this is a private conversation." "It's over." Wade advanced, rifle steady. "You and your men are going to mount up and leave. And if I ever see you on my property again, if I ever hear you've come within a mile of Amanda, I will kill you. That's not a threat. That's a fact." "You'd hang for murder." "Maybe, but you'd still be dead." Wade's voice was utterly calm, which made it more terrifying. "Is your pride worth your life, Garrett? Because mine isn't. I've already lost everything once. Got nothing left to lose now except her." He jerked his head toward Amanda. "And I will burn the whole world down before I let you hurt her again." Garrett studied him for a long moment, calculating. Then he smiled. "You're bluffing. You're a coward who refused orders. You don't have killing in you." "Try me." Something in Wade's voice must have convinced him. Garrett's smile faltered. He stepped back, gestured to his men. "Mount up. We're leaving." "Smart choice." "This isn't over, Langston." "Yeah, it is. You just don't know it yet." Wade kept the rifle trained on them as they mounted. "One more thing, Garrett. Caroline Fletcher isn't the only one who knows what you are now. Word spreads in small towns. Might be time for you to think about moving on yourself. Find some place where people don't know what you've done." "You can't prove anything." "Don't need to prove it. Just need people to wonder. Just need enough doubt planted that your reputation starts to crack. And trust me, I'm real good at planting seeds." Wade's smile was sharp. "Now get off my land." Garrett rode away, his men following. But before he disappeared down the road, he turned back and looked at Amanda. "This isn't over." Then they were gone. Wade lowered the rifle slowly, then turned to Amanda. She was shaking pale, but still standing. "You all right?" She nodded, unable to speak. "Come here." Amanda moved without thinking, crossing the space between them. Wade set down the rifle and opened his arms, and she fell into them, finally letting herself break. He held her while she sobbed, one hand cradling her head, the other firm around her back, surrounding her with safety. "I've got you," he murmured. "I've got you. He can't hurt you. I won't let him. He said he burned the bakery. He confessed." "I heard." Wade's voice was grim. "I heard all of it, and I'm going to make sure everyone else hears it too." Amanda pulled back enough to look at him. "How did you know to come back?" "I didn't. I forgot my canteen, came back to grab it, saw the horses and rode up quiet-like to see what was happening." He cupped her face gently. "But I'm real glad I forgot that canteen. He'll come back. You know he will. Maybe. But next time we'll be ready." Wade's expression hardened. "And next time I won't be alone. I'm going to talk to John Fletcher, to some of the other ranchers I trust. We're going to make sure Garrett understands he's not untouchable anymore." "Wade, that's dangerous. So is doing nothing." He pressed his forehead against hers. "I told you I'd protect you, Amanda. I meant it. Whatever it takes." She believed him. God help her, she believed him. They stood there in the yard holding each other as the sun sank lower in the sky, and Amanda realized something had shifted. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This wasn't just about running from the past. This was about standing and fighting. About refusing to let fear win. About trusting that sometimes, just sometimes, the good man actually stays and fights beside you, instead of walking away when things get hard. "I love you," she whispered against his chest. "I don't know when it happened. Maybe it's been happening all along. But I love you, Wade Langston, and I'm not running anymore." His arms tightened around her. "Say it again." "I love you. Again. I love you." And this time she pulled back to look him in the eyes. "I love you, and I'm staying, and we're going to fight this together." Wade smiled, broad and genuine, and filled with something that looked like hope. "Yeah, we are." He kissed her forehead, gentle and reverent. "Together. That's a promise." As the sun set over the Texas prairie, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold, Amanda and Wade stood together in the yard of their ranch, holding each other against the coming darkness. The fight wasn't over. Garrett was still out there, still dangerous. But they weren't alone anymore. They had each other. And sometimes that was enough to tip the balance between victory and defeat. Sometimes love was the bravest thing you could choose. Wade didn't waste time. The morning after Garrett's threat, he rode out before dawn to the Fletcher ranch. Amanda watched him go from the porch, the shotgun propped against the doorframe beside her, and tried not to let fear swallow her whole again. But Wade had promised he'd be back by noon, and she was learning that Wade Langston kept his promises. She spent the morning preparing. If Garrett came back when he came back, she wouldn't be caught defenseless. She moved weapons to strategic locations throughout the house, loaded the spare rifle, and positioned it upstairs. Checked the locks on every window and door. Filled buckets with water and placed them in every room, remembering too well what fire could do. When Wade returned just after 11, he wasn't alone. John Fletcher rode beside him, a broad-shouldered man with kind eyes and a jaw set with determination. Behind them came 3 more riders, ranchers Amanda had never met, men whose faces were weathered by years of hard living, but whose postures spoke of integrity. Amanda met them in the yard. Wade dismounted and came to her immediately, his hand finding hers. "Amanda, you remember John Fletcher. This is Tom Ridgway, Paul Martinez, and James Crawford. They're neighbors, friends, and they're here to help." John tipped his hat. "Mrs. Langston, my wife told me what happened both 20 years ago and now. We're here to make sure Garrett understands he's made his last threat. I don't want anyone getting hurt because of me. Amanda said. This isn't just about you anymore. Tom Ridgway was maybe 50 with silver streaking his dark hair. Garrett's been throwing his weight around this territory for years. Most of us have stayed quiet because we didn't have cause to challenge him. Now we do. Paul Martinez, younger than the others with sharp eyes that missed nothing, nodded. A man who threatens women, who burns buildings with people inside, that's not a man we want in our community. Wade told us what Garrett said yesterday. That's enough. But there's no proof, Amanda argued. It's still just my word against his. Not anymore. James Crawford pulled a folded paper from his jacket. I did some digging after Wade came to me this morning. Sent a telegram to the marshal's office in Abilene. Turns out there were 3 other fires in towns where Garrett lived before he came to Dry Ridge. 3 fires that destroyed businesses belonging to families who had daughters Garrett showed interest in. No charges were ever filed, but the pattern's there. Amanda's breath caught. 3 others. 3 we know about. Could be more. James's expression was grim. Pattern like that doesn't lie, and while it's not enough for a murder charge, it's enough to get a federal marshal interested. I've invited him to Dry Ridge. He should be here within the week. Wade squeezed her hand. You see, you're not alone in this. Not anymore. What do we do until the marshal arrives? Amanda looked between the men. Garrett's not going to just wait patiently. No, he won't. John Fletcher's voice was steady. Which is why we're setting up a rotation. 2 men here at all times until this is settled. Garrett won't try anything if he knows he's outnumbered. I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking. We're offering. Tom Ridgway's smile was kind but firm. Besides, my wife's been after me to spend more time with the Langstons. Says Caroline won't stop talking about how brave you are. Figure I should get to know the woman who's got my wife so fired up about fighting injustice. Despite everything, Amanda felt a smile tug at her lips. Thank you. All of you. I don't know how to repay. No repayment needed? Paul interrupted. This is what neighbors do. We stand together. They spent the afternoon organizing. Tom and James would take the first watch, staying in the barn with clear sight lines to the house and the road. Paul would return the next morning to relieve them. John would coordinate with the other ranchers, spreading the word about Garrett's pattern and building a case of community testimony that couldn't be dismissed as easily as one woman's accusation. As the men worked, Caroline Fletcher arrived with a basket of food and her steady presence. She found Amanda in the kitchen, hands braced on the counter, breathing slowly. Overwhelming, isn't it? Caroline said. Having people actually believe you and fight for you. I don't know how to handle it. Amanda's voice was raw. For 3 years I've been alone with this. Now suddenly there are all these people. It's terrifying, Caroline finished. Because if they fail, if Garrett wins anyway, it'll hurt worse than when you were alone. She set down the basket and moved to stand beside Amanda. But they won't fail. And you won't be alone again. That's what community means, Amanda. It means carrying each other when the weight gets too heavy for one person. What if I can't do this? What if I freeze when the marshal comes? What if I can't make them understand? Then I'll speak for you. So will Wade. So will every person who's seen what Garrett is and decided enough is enough. Caroline's voice was fierce. You started this by being brave enough to survive. Let the rest of us finish it. That night, with Tom and James keeping watch in the barn and Caroline having stayed for supper before John took her home, Amanda and Wade finally had a moment alone. They sat on the porch in the twilight, close enough that their shoulders touched, watching stars emerge from the darkening sky. I never expected this, Amanda said quietly. When I came west, I thought I was running toward nothing, just away from the past. But this... She gestured toward the barn where lantern light glowed, where good men stood guard because they'd chosen to care. This is something real, something worth staying for. That's what home is, Wade said. Not just a place. People who choose to stand with you. Is that why you came back from the war? To find home? Wade was quiet for a long moment. I came back because I couldn't stay in a world where burning churches full of innocents was considered acceptable orders. I came back looking for... He paused, searching for words. For proof that goodness still existed somewhere, that honor meant something beyond following commands. Did you find it? I found pieces. John and Caroline. A few other folks who didn't care about my dishonorable discharge. And then, he turned to look at her. Then I found you. And you were proof that courage doesn't always look like soldiers in battles. Sometimes it looks like a woman who gets on a stagecoach to marry a stranger because staying would have killed her. Amanda's eyes stung with tears. I'm not courageous. I'm terrified most of the time. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what needs doing despite the fear. Wade's hand found hers in the darkness. You're the bravest person I know, Amanda Langston. She leaned her head on his shoulder, and they sat that way until the stars filled the sky and the night sounds of the prairie surrounded them with something that felt almost like peace. 3 days passed in tense quiet. The rotation of guards continued. No one saw Garrett, but Amanda felt his presence like a storm building on the horizon. You couldn't see it yet, but you could feel it in the pressure of the air, in the way animals grew skittish in the wrongness that preceded disaster. On the 4th day, the marshal arrived. Marshal William Davies was a tall man in his late 50s, with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much of humanity's darkness, but hadn't given up on finding its light. He came to the ranch with James Crawford, his saddlebags heavy with documents and testimony from other towns, other women, other fires that followed Garrett like a signature. Wade and Amanda met him on the porch. Amanda's hands were shaking, but she kept them steady by sheer force of will. Mrs. Langston. The marshal's voice was respectful, measured. I've been reading about Thomas Garrett for 3 days now. I'd like to hear your story if you're willing to tell it. They sat at the kitchen table, Amanda, Wade, the marshal, and Caroline, who'd arrived that morning and refused to leave. Amanda told the story again, every painful detail, while the marshal took notes, and Wade's hand never left hers. When she finished, the marshal was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Thank you for your courage in speaking. I know that wasn't easy." What happens now? Amanda's voice was hoarse from talking. Now I go talk to Garrett. Confront him with the pattern with the evidence. See if I can get him to confess. The marshal's expression was grim. Men like him, they're arrogant. Sometimes that arrogance makes them careless. They confess because they can't stand people not knowing how clever they've been. And if he doesn't confess, then I build the case anyway. Multiple fires, multiple accusations across multiple jurisdictions. That's enough to open an investigation, maybe bring charges. It won't be fast, it won't be easy. But it's more than you've had before. It's more than I ever thought I'd have, Amanda whispered. Thank you. The marshal left an hour later, riding toward town with James as his guide. Wade wanted to go with them, but the marshal had been firm. This was federal business now, and civilians could complicate things. So Wade stayed with Amanda, both of them waiting for news that might not come for hours or days. They didn't have to wait long. The smoke started just after sunset. Amanda saw it first from the upstairs window, an orange glow on the horizon, too bright to be a campfire, spreading too fast to be controlled. Her heart stopped. Wade? Her scream brought him running. Fire! There's a fire in town! They could see it clearly from the porch flames lighting up the sky above Dry Ridge, smoke billowing thick and dark. Tom and Paul were already saddling horses in the barn, shouting for Wade. It's the church! Tom yelled. Someone torched the church! Wade was moving before Amanda could stop him, grabbing his rifle, his hat swinging into the saddle. Stay here, he told her. Lock the doors, load the weapons. Don't open for anyone but me. Wade, don't go. I have to. People might be trapped. His eyes locked with hers, fierce with determination. I couldn't save that church during the war, but I can save this one. Stay safe. I'll come back. Then he was gone, riding hard toward town with Tom and Paul flanking him. and Amanda was left standing in the yard with terror clawing at her throat. Caroline appeared at her side, must have ridden up during the chaos. "Come on. We're going too." Wade said to stay. Wade's not thinking clearly. He's thinking about the war, about churches, about saving people. Carolyn was already moving toward her horse. "But we know what this really is. Garrett's sending a message. And if the church is burning, who do you think he'll come for next?" Amanda understood immediately. The fire was a distraction. While every able-bodied man in the territory rode to fight it, Garrett would come here. Would finish what he'd started. "Get the shotgun," Amanda said, her voice suddenly steady. "And any ammunition you can carry. If he wants a fight, we'll give him one." They prepared with grim efficiency. Caroline was a ranch woman. She knew weapons, knew strategy, knew how to defend a position. They barricaded the doors, opened windows for sight lines and shooting positions, loaded every gun in the house. "You ever shoot a man?" Caroline asked as they worked. "No, you. Once. Cattle thief tried to break into our house while John was away. Put a bullet through his leg. He lived, but he never came back." Caroline checked her rifle with practiced hands. "Point is, I can shoot if I have to. Can you?" Amanda thought about Garrett's face, his threats, the casual way he'd admitted to burning her parents alive. "Yes, if it's him I can shoot." They didn't have to wait long. The riders came just as full dark settled, 4 of them moving fast, spreading out to surround the house. Garrett's voice rang out from the darkness. "Amanda, I know you're in there. The marshal thinks he's clever bringing up old fires, old accusations, but he doesn't understand how this works. How I work." His laugh was cold. "You should have left when I gave you the chance. Now it's too late." Amanda positioned herself at the front window, rifle barrel resting on the sill. Caroline took the back. Their eyes met across the room, 2 women who'd been broken by the same man now standing together to make sure he couldn't break anyone else. "Come out, Amanda," Garrett called. "Come out, and maybe I'll let your husband live. Maybe I won't burn him alive when he comes back from trying to save that church." Amanda's finger tightened on the trigger, but she held fire. Waited. Garrett was trying to draw her out, to make her act from fear instead of strategy. "No." Garrett's voice turned mocking. "Then I guess we'll have to come get you. Boys?" The first man to reach the porch took a bullet through the shoulder from Caroline's rifle. His scream split the night as he fell, and the other men scattered, seeking cover. "That's far enough." Caroline's voice rang out strong. "Next one's through the chest, not the shoulder. Anyone else want to test me?" Silence. Then Garrett's voice, angrier now. "You're only making this worse." "No." Amanda surprised herself by shouting back. "You made it worse. You made it worse 20 years ago when you hurt Caroline. You made it worse 3 years ago when you killed my parents. You made it worse every time you thought your money and power meant you could destroy people without consequences. But the consequences are here now, Garrett, and they're coming for you." A shot rang out, shattering the window above Amanda's head. She ducked, glass raining down, then returned fire blindly into the darkness. Another scream, she'd hit someone. The standoff continued for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Garrett's men tried twice more to rush the house, and twice more the women drove them back with rifle fire. Amanda had never been so terrified or so alive in her life. Then in the distance they heard it, hoofbeats, multiple horses moving fast. Garrett heard it too. "Fall back," he shouted to his men. "Fall back." But it was too late. A dozen riders swept into the yard surrounding Garrett and what remained of his crew. In the lead was Marshal Davies, with Wade right beside him, and half the ranchers in the territory flanking them. "Thomas Garrett." The marshal's voice carried authority that couldn't be ignored. "You're under arrest for arson, attempted murder, and conspiracy to intimidate witnesses." Garrett's laugh was desperate now, edging toward hysteria. "You can't prove anything. You've got nothing but the words of hysterical women." "I've got your confession." Marshal Davies dismounted, approaching with iron shackles ready. You confessed to burning the Bell's Bakery. You confessed in front of Wade Langston, who testified under oath an hour ago. And when you torched that church tonight, you made your biggest mistake. You did it in front of witnesses. Federal witnesses. That's arson of a religious building, Garrett. That's a federal crime with federal penalties. The church. Garrett's face went pale. I never. You were seen. By the pastor who was working late in his office. By the marshal here who was waiting in the shadows in case you did exactly what you did. By me. Wade's voice was cold steel. You set that fire thinking it would be blamed on me, disgraced Union scout with a history of refusing to burn churches. But you forgot one thing. I refused to burn a church before. Why would I start now? The logic was airtight. The trap had been perfect. Garrett sagged in his saddle, and Amanda saw the moment he realized he was finished. It was all of them, he said, suddenly desperately. All the fires, the businesses, the families. They disrespected me. They tried to accuse me. They had to be taught lessons about what happens when people challenge me. That's a confession. The marshal secured the shackles around Garrett's wrists. Thomas Garrett, you're under arrest. Anything else you say will be used against you in a court of law. Amanda stepped out onto the porch, rifle still in hand, and watched as they led Garrett away. He looked at her as he passed, and she saw something in his face that might have been remorse, or might have just been self-pity. I was somebody, he said. I was important. You were nothing, Amanda replied. You were just a small man who hurt people because it made you feel big. But you were always nothing. They took him away into the night, and Amanda stood watching until the sound of hoofbeats faded. Then her legs gave out. Wade was there, instantly catching her before she hit the ground, gathering her close. I've got you. You're safe. It's over. Is it really over? She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. Yeah, really over. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips, soft, reverent kisses that tasted like smoke and relief. You were so brave, so damn brave. Caroline emerged from the house, lowering her rifle. We were both brave. That's what happens when women stop letting fear rule them. John Fletcher rode up and dismounted, pulling Caroline into a fierce embrace. You could have been killed. But I wasn't. We weren't. Caroline looked at Amanda over her husband's shoulder. Because we stood together. The other ranchers were gathering now, checking the house for damage, collecting Garrett's wounded men to take into custody. Tom Ridgway clapped Wade on the shoulder. You planned that well, Langston. Getting the marshal to watch the church, guessing Garrett would try to frame you. It was a gamble. Wade's arms tightened around Amanda. But I knew he wouldn't be able to resist. Men like him, they're predictable. They think they're smarter than everyone else, and that makes them sloppy. The church, Amanda said suddenly. How bad was the damage? Not as bad as it could have been. We caught it fast. Garrett barely got it started before the marshal moved in. Wade smiled grimly. We'll rebuild what burned. It'll be better than before. Everything will be better than before. Amanda looked up at him. This man who'd fought for her when she couldn't fight for herself, who'd believed her when no one else would, who'd loved her through her fear and her locked doors and her broken pieces. Because of you. Because you chose to stay. I'll always stay, Wade promised. That's what love means. Staying when it's hard. Fighting when it matters. Building something better from the ashes. Around them, the community that had come together to protect them began to disperse, returning to their own ranches and families. But the bonds forged that night would hold. The silence that had protected Garrett for so long had been broken, and in its place was something stronger. Truth, justice, community, and two people who'd learned that love wasn't about rescue or perfection. It was about choosing each other day after day through fire and fear, and the slow, painful work of healing. Amanda kissed Wade properly, then there in the yard, with the smoke still drifting on the wind, and the stars bearing witness above them. It was a kiss that tasted of survival and hope, and the fierce joy of having fought for something and won. When they finally pulled apart, Wade rested his forehead against hers. "Come on. Let's go inside. Let's go home." Home. Not just a house, not just land. Home was this man and this moment, and the future they'd build together from the rubble of their pasts. Amanda took his hand and let him lead her inside, and for the first time in 3 years, she walked through a doorway without fear. The fire had taken so much from her, but it had also tempered her, forged her into something stronger than she'd been before. And now, finally, she was ready to live instead of just survive, ready to love instead of just endure, ready to be home. The trial took place 6 weeks later in the territorial courthouse in Abilene, and Amanda testified with Wade sitting in the front row where she could see him every time her courage faltered. She told the truth, all of it, and this time people listened. The jury listened. The judge listened. And when Caroline Fletcher took the stand after her and told her own story when 3 other women from 3 other towns came forward with accounts that echoed Amanda's, so precisely they couldn't be dismissed as coincidence, the courtroom fell into a silence that felt like vindication. Garrett's lawyers tried to paint the women as conspirators, as scorned females seeking revenge for imagined slights. But the evidence was damning. The pattern of fires, the confession Wade had witnessed, the attempted arson of the church with a federal marshal as witness. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. When the verdict was read, Amanda felt Wade's hand find hers across the courtroom railing, felt the squeeze of his fingers, and she finally let herself believe what her heart had been too afraid to accept. It was really over. Garrett would spend the rest of his life in prison. He could never hurt her or anyone else again. Outside the courthouse, Caroline embraced her so tightly, Amanda could barely breathe. "We did it," Caroline whispered. "We actually did it." "You started it," Amanda said. "Coming to the ranch that day telling me I wasn't alone. That changed everything." "No, you changed everything by being brave enough to tell your story in the first place." Caroline pulled back, her eyes bright with tears. "You gave me permission to stop being afraid. That's the gift you gave me, Amanda. That's the gift you gave all of us." The other women who'd testified gathered around them: Sarah from Kansas, who Garrett had assaulted 15 years ago; Margaret from Missouri, who'd lost her family's general store to a suspicious fire after she rejected his advances; Elena from Colorado, whose father had died trying to fight the blaze that consumed his livery stable. Women Garrett had tried to silence, tried to bury under shame and fear, and the weight of a world that didn't believe them. But they'd believed each other, and that belief had been enough to bring a monster to justice. The ride back to Dry Ridge took 2 days, and Amanda spent most of it watching the landscape roll past and marveling at how different the world looked when you weren't running from it. The prairie grass swayed in the wind, golden and endless. The sky stretched impossibly wide, blue and clear, and beside her, Wade drove the wagon with steady hands and told her stories about the ranch, about the foal that had been born while they were away, about the plans he had for expanding the herd now that he had a partner to help him manage it. "A real partner," he'd said, glancing at her with a smile. "Not just a wife in name, a partner in everything." "You sure you want that?" Amanda had teased. "I'm stubborn, opinionated. I'll probably argue with half your decisions." "Good. I need someone who'll tell me when I'm being foolish." His smile widened. "Besides, I like you stubborn. Means you've got spine. This life out here, it requires spine." When they finally crested the rise that looked down on the Langston Ranch, Amanda felt something shift in her chest. The house sat solid and welcoming in the afternoon light. The barn freshly painted by Tom and Paul while they were gone. The corrals with horses moving lazily in the heat. The garden plot where her chrysanthemums bloomed gold and russet. Home. This was home now. Not just a place she'd fled to, but a place she'd chosen to build a life in. Wade helped her down from the wagon, And this time when his hands lingered on her waist, she didn't flinch. She leaned into him, let herself feel the solid warmth of him, let herself trust that this was real and lasting, and hers. "Welcome home, Mrs. Langston," he murmured against her hair. "It's good to be home, Mr. Langston." They stood that way for a moment, just holding each other before the sound of approaching horses made them turn. John and Caroline Fletcher rode up the path, and behind them came what looked like half the territory ranchers and their families, townspeople, even Mrs. Patterson from the general store, all carrying food and supplies and smiles. "Surprise," Caroline called out, dismounting with practiced ease. "We figured you'd be too tired to cook after that long ride, so we're bringing supper to you." What followed was chaos in the best possible way. People filled the house and yard spreading blankets for an impromptu celebration. Children ran wild between the adults while women unpacked enough food to feed an army. The men gathered around Wade, clapping him on the back, praising his courage and standing up to Garrett. But it was Amanda they kept approaching one by one to offer quiet thanks. "My daughter's 15, said a rancher whose name Amanda didn't know yet. "What you did testifying, fighting back, that's going to make the world safer for her." "Thank you." "You showed people that speaking up matters," said another woman older with kind eyes. "My sister was hurt by a man 20 years ago. Nobody believed her. She died thinking she was alone. But you proved that the truth can win if enough people are brave enough to speak it." Over and over the gratitude came, and Amanda found herself crying and laughing and overwhelmed by the simple fact that she mattered to these people. That her story had changed something larger than just her own life. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of fire that no longer frightened her, Wade found her sitting on the porch steps, watching the celebration continue in the yard. "You all right?" He sat beside her close enough that their shoulders touched. "I'm more than all right." She leaned her head against him. "I'm happy. Actually genuinely happy. I didn't think I'd ever feel this again." "You deserve it. You deserve all of this and more." He kissed the top of her head. "You know what I was thinking today?" "What?" "That you're the strongest person I've ever met. Stronger than any soldier I served with. Stronger than anyone who's ever called me brave." His voice was thick with emotion. "You survived something that would have destroyed most people, and instead of letting it make you bitter or broken beyond repair, you fought your way back to living. That's..." He stopped searching for words. "That's heroic, Amanda. That's real courage." "I didn't feel courageous. I felt terrified most of the time. That's what makes it courage. Doing what needs doing, even when you're scared." He turned to look at her properly. "I love you. I know I've said it before, but I need you to hear it again. I love you for your strength, and your fear for your locked doors, and your unlocked ones, for every piece of you that's healing, and every piece that's still hurting. All of it. I love all of it." Amanda's throat tightened with emotion. "I love you too. So much it scares me sometimes. Because loving someone means they can hurt you. And I spent so long protecting myself from hurt that letting you in felt like standing in front of a fire," Wade finished gently. "Yeah, exactly like that." She wiped her eyes. "But you know what fire isn't just destruction. It's also warmth, light, the thing that keeps you alive when winter comes. And that's what loving you feels like. Like I'm finally warm again after being cold for so long." Wade pulled her close, and they sat that way, while the celebration continued around them, while the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, while the life they'd fought so hard for settled into something real and solid and theirs. Later that night, after the guests had gone home and the house was quiet again, Amanda stood in the doorway of her bedroom, the room that had been her sanctuary, her fortress, her cage. She looked at the lock on the door at the key sitting on the dresser where she'd left it that morning. Wade came up behind her, careful not to crowd. "You don't have to decide anything tonight. That room's still yours if you want it. Your space. Your choice." Amanda thought about all the nights she'd spent behind that locked door, all the times she'd needed the barrier between herself and the world. It had saved her when she'd needed saving. But she didn't need saving anymore. She picked up the key and held it out to Wade. "I don't want to sleep alone tonight. Or any night after this, if that's all right with you." Wade took the key carefully, like it was something precious. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." She stepped closer to him. "I'm ready to stop hiding. Ready to start living. Ready to—" She paused, then smiled. "Ready to see what comes next for us. What comes next is whatever we build together." Wade set the key on the dresser, then cupped her face in his hands. "But it starts with this, with choosing each other. Every day. In the easy times and the hard ones. That's what marriage really is, Amanda. Not the ceremony or the contract. Just the daily choice to stay." "Then I choose you," she whispered. "Today and tomorrow and every day after that. I choose you, Wade Langston." He kissed her, then deep and slow and full of promise. And when he lifted her in his arms and carried her to his room at the end of the hall, Amanda went without fear, without hesitation, trusting that this man who'd given her space to heal would now give her space to love. The months that followed were the happiest of Amanda's life. Spring turned to summer, and the ranch thrived under their combined efforts. Amanda learned to rope and brand to read the weather, and the cattle to shoot straight and ride hard. She learned that she was stronger than she'd ever imagined, that the girl who'd been afraid of her own shadow had become a woman who could face down anything. She also learned what it meant to be loved without conditions. Wade never pushed her beyond what she could handle, never made demands she wasn't ready to meet, but he also never treated her like she was fragile. He treated her like an equal, a partner, someone whose opinions mattered and whose strength he respected. They worked side by side during the days and fell asleep in each other's arms at night. They argued sometimes passionate debates about the best way to manage the herd or where to plant next season's crops. But the arguments never turned cruel, never became weapons designed to hurt. They were just two strong-willed people learning to compromise. Learning that love didn't mean always agreeing, but rather respecting each other enough to find middle ground. Caroline Fletcher became Amanda's closest friend, riding over at least once a week to drink coffee on the porch and talk about everything and nothing. They spoke about the trial sometimes, about the relief of seeing Garrett locked away where he couldn't hurt anyone else. But mostly, they talked about ordinary things, recipes and weather, and the small triumphs and frustrations of daily life. "You're different now," Caroline observed one afternoon in late summer. "Lighter somehow." "I feel lighter." Amanda poured more coffee into Caroline's cup. "Like I've been carrying a weight for so long I forgot what it felt like to stand up straight. But now—" She smiled. "Now I remember." "That's healing," Caroline said. "Real healing. Not pretending the hurt never happened, but learning to carry it without letting it break you." By autumn, when the first cold winds began to blow down from the north and the prairie grass turned brown and gold, Amanda realized she'd gone an entire month without a nightmare. The past still lived in her, it always would, but it no longer ruled her. She'd made peace with what she'd survived and who she'd become because of it. One evening in early October, as they sat by the fireplace after supper, Wade reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, wrapped in cloth. "I've been working on this for a while now. Wasn't sure when the right time would be to give it to you, but—" He paused, suddenly uncertain. "I think maybe now is right." Amanda unwrapped the cloth carefully. Inside was a ring, not gold or silver, but carved from dark wood that had been polished until it gleamed. She looked closer and realized the wood was charred-burned at some point before being shaped into something beautiful. "It's from the willow tree out by the garden," Wade explained. "You remember the one that survived the fire the night Garrett came? Part of it was scorched, burned black, but it kept growing anyway, kept living." He took the ring from her trembling fingers. "I carved this from one of the burned branches. Figured if that tree could grow back from fire, maybe we could too. Maybe something beautiful could come from something that was meant to destroy." Amanda's vision blurred with tears. Wade, I know we're already married. I know you've already got a ring. He gestured to the simple gold band she wore. But that ring was about a contract about necessity and survival. This one, he held up the carved wood ring. This one's about choice, about love, about everything we've built together since that day you got off the stagecoach scared to death but brave enough to try anyway. It's perfect, Amanda whispered. It's the most perfect thing I've ever seen. Wade slipped it onto her finger beside the gold band. Marry me again, Amanda. Not because you need to, but because you want to. Not because you're running from something, but because you're running toward something. Toward us. Toward the life we're building together. Yes. The word came out choked with emotion. Yes, I'll marry you again. 1,000 times yes. They held each other while the fire crackled and the wind howled outside, and Amanda thought about how far she'd come from that terrified girl who'd stepped off the stagecoach 6 months ago. She'd been running from fire, then running from pain and loss, and a past that had nearly destroyed her. But she wasn't running anymore. She was standing still, standing strong, standing beside a man who'd taught her that love didn't have to hurt. That kindness wasn't a weakness, that healing was possible even when it seemed impossible. On a Sunday morning in late October, when the air was crisp and the sky was impossibly blue, they gathered at the newly rebuilt church in Dry Ridge. The same church Garrett had tried to burn, now standing stronger than before, with fresh timber and new windows that caught the sunlight and threw it in patterns across the floor. Caroline stood with Amanda, adjusting the simple blue dress Amanda had sewn from the fabric Wade had bought all those months ago. John Fletcher stood with Wade, both men dressed in their Sunday best, both grinning like fools. The church was packed. Every rancher in the territory had come, every family who'd stood with them during the fight against Garrett. Mrs. Patterson from the general store sat in the front row, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. Tom Ridgway and Paul Martinez and James Crawford were there with their families. Even Marshall Davies had ridden in from Abilene to witness the ceremony. But the most important guests were the ones who'd traveled the farthest. Sarah from Kansas, Margaret from Missouri, Elena from Colorado. The women who'd testified, who'd stood together in that courtroom, and proved that truth could win when enough people were brave enough to speak it. They sat together in the third row, smiling through tears, knowing that this wedding represented something larger than just two people committing to each other. It represented victory, hope, the possibility of healing and happiness after trauma. Pastor Williams, whose office had been in the church the night Garrett set the fire, who'd witnessed everything and testified about it with a fury born of righteous anger, stood before them with a Bible in hand and joy on his weathered face. "Dearly beloved," he began, and Amanda felt Wade's hand tighten around hers. They spoke their vows, new ones this time, written by themselves in the quiet of their home, words that meant everything because they were chosen rather than required. Wade went first, his voice steady and sure. "Amanda, when you came to me, you were running from fire. But you taught me that fire doesn't just destroy, it also purifies. It burns away everything false until only truth remains. You are my truth. You are the proof that love can grow in scorched earth, that beauty can rise from ashes, that two broken people can build something whole together. I promise to protect you, to believe you, to stand with you in every fight that comes our way. I promise to give you space when you need it, and closeness when you crave it. I promise to love you through your fear and your courage, through your locked doors and your open ones, through every season of our lives together. This is my vow to you, given freely chosen, gladly, meant eternally." Amanda's tears were flowing freely now, but she smiled through them as she spoke her own vows. "Wade, you taught me that safety doesn't come from walls and locked doors. It comes from being with someone who sees all of you, the broken pieces, the scared parts, the damaged places, and chooses to love you anyway. You gave me patience when I needed time. You gave me protection when I needed strength. But most importantly, You gave me the freedom to heal at my own pace without pressure or demands. You believed me when no one else would. You fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself. And you loved me when I didn't know how to love myself. I promise to be your partner in all things. I promise to stand beside you, not behind you. I promise to bring my strength to match yours, to carry you when you stumble, to remind you of your worth when you forget it. I promise to love you fiercely and gently, wildly and steadily, through every joy and sorrow that comes our way. This is my vow to you, given from a healed heart, spoken with a clear voice, meant for all the days of my life. Pastor William smiled through his own tears. By the power vested in me, and in the presence of these witnesses, I pronounce you husband and wife. Wade, you may kiss your bride. Wade cupped Amanda's face in his calloused hands and kissed her softly, reverently, like she was something precious he'd waited his whole life to find. And Amanda kissed him back with all the love and gratitude and hope that filled her heart to overflowing. The church erupted in applause and cheers. People stood clapping and shouting blessings and joy, and Amanda and Wade turned to face them, hands clasped tight, smiling so wide their faces hurt. This was healing. This was victory. This was what it looked like when you refused to let trauma have the final word. The celebration afterward lasted well into the evening. Tables were set up outside the church laden with food and drink. Children ran wild while adults ate and danced and told stories. The sun set in brilliant shades of orange and gold, and lanterns were lit to push back the darkness. Amanda danced with Wade beneath the stars, his arms strong around her, his voice soft in her ear as he hummed the tune the fiddler played. She looked around at the community that had formed around them, at the faces of people who'd chosen to stand with them, and felt overwhelming gratitude for the journey that had brought her here. Yes, the journey had been painful. Yes, she carried scars, both visible and invisible, that would never fully fade. But those scars were proof of survival. They were evidence that she'd walked through fire and come out the other side. And what waited on the other side was so much better than she'd ever imagined possible. Later, much later, when the celebration finally wound down and the guests began heading home, Wade lifted Amanda into the wagon for the ride back to their ranch. She curled against his side, exhausted but happy, watching the stars wheel overhead in their ancient patterns. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing me, for believing me, for loving me when I didn't know how to love myself." She looked up at him. "For giving me a reason to stop running and start living." "You did that yourself," Wade said. "I just gave you a safe place to figure it out." "You gave me everything that matters." Amanda's hand found the wooden ring on her finger, the ring carved from burned wood, the symbol of everything they'd survived and everything they'd built. "You gave me home." They rode through the Texas night, two people who'd been broken by their pasts, but refused to be defined by them. Two people who'd learned that love wasn't about rescue or perfection, but about showing up day after day, choosing each other through the hard times and the easy ones, building something lasting from the ashes of what had been destroyed. When they reached the ranch, Wade carried Amanda over the threshold, even though they'd done this months ago, even though it was tradition meant for new brides, and they were far past that now. But traditions were about more than timing. They were about intention, about marking moments that mattered. And this moment mattered. This was the beginning of their real marriage, the one built on choice and truth and love, rather than fear and necessity and desperation. Wade set Amanda down gently in their bedroom, not her old room with its lock and its ghosts, but the room they shared now, the room where healing and love and hope lived. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips, each kiss a promise renewed. "I love you, Amanda Langston," he whispered against her skin. "I love you, Wade Langston," she whispered back, "today and always." Outside, the prairie wind sang through the grass, carrying away the last remnants of smoke and fear and pain. Inside, two people who'd been marked by fire learned what it meant to warm each other with its light, instead of burning each other with its fury. They'd been tested by flames and emerged stronger. They'd been broken by trauma and healed through patience. They'd been lost in darkness and found their way to light together. And in the end, that was what love was supposed to do. Not erase the past, but transform it. Not pretend the wounds never happened, but help each other carry them until they became scars instead of open bleeding places. Not promise that pain would never come again, but vow to face it together when it did. Amanda fell asleep that night wrapped in Wade's arms in a room with an unlocked door, in a house that was truly home on a ranch where chrysanthemums bloomed gold in the garden, and a scarred willow tree reached toward the sky, in stubborn defiance of the fire that tried to destroy it. She fell asleep knowing she was safe, loved, believed, and valued. She fell asleep knowing that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop running from the fire and learn to stand in its warmth instead. She fell asleep knowing that she'd survived, that she'd healed, that she'd found love in the last place she expected to look for it. And when morning came, she would wake up beside a good man in a good place and continue building a good life from the wreckage of what had been lost. Because that was what healing looked like. That was what love did. That was what happened when courage met compassion and fear finally learned to rest. The mail-order bride who'd arrived with fear in her eyes had learned to arrive each new day with hope in her heart instead, and that transformation from terror to trust, from running to standing, from surviving to thriving, was the greatest victory of all.